So I'm going to talk today about the four worlds, and it came out of my work with Ra. In 1999, Ra and I formed a partnership, and he asked my husband, Marvin, who's an MD, and myself to validate the human design system medically and clinically, and to do it separate from the human design community, because he was dumbing down the information for the human design community, and he wanted us to be independently researching and getting the statistics. So I did the statistics, and I will share those. I did find that there were 5 types, not 4 types, which validated Ra's hypothesis. But he planned to keep teaching about 4 types. But what I want to show you today is what really came out of my research, which is that we live in 4 worlds: the mental world, the spiritual world, the emotional, and the physical. I've put together an ebook for you so that you can learn about the worlds. And in the worlds, the matrices of each world integrate. And in the ebook, I put a quote that Ra wrote in one of our books. And we were teaching the dream rave. I taught the first class on the dream rave in November of 1999, and began to recognize that there was more to it than just the initial lunar calculation. That was actually the dream design, but we needed a sleep design. So based on the statistics I had run, I was able to delineate all 4 worlds in their calculations and in their matrices. And when Ra saw what I was doing with the dream rave, he said, one of the most extraordinary statistics that we have come up with so far in Rave Life Sciences, which was the name of our company, shows that although the waking rave ajna center is significant, that is, its existence is necessary, it is not significant enough through the waking rave alone to really make any kind of difference in our underlying biological process. That is, it is only in the integrated, synthesized, interactive matrices that mind-body issues can be fully seen and explained. One of the things to recognize about the mind as an awareness is that the mind as such is not a place in which our problems are sourced. Biological problems are not sourced there in terms of the waking rave body graph design. Ross said that in the book we wrote in 2000 on the biology design. So I decided in this ebook to show you the difference between Steve Jobs in the human design chart, which is the mental world. The mental world is the world that we live in. It's the world that we think in. It's the world of reality. And it is the world that we're socialized into. And I want to make a little bit of a distinction for you between this socialized world and conditioning. Ra used the term conditioning, and he used it really as socialization, where you learn how you have to behave in the mental world. And when we learn in a culture to behave in the mental world, we dress a certain way, we talk a certain way, our diet tends to be a certain way. All of those things are the mental world. And not all of those things in the mental world are right for us. what is right for us comes from our spirit, from who we are. And in my over 50 years of clinical psychology practice, what I've observed is that people are hurt when their soul is not recognized. People want to be seen, be heard, and be recognized. And that's true across the board. So if we look at Steve Jobs' basic human design chart, and I will make it bigger for you. I think this should do it. I'll make it a little bit bigger. If you look at Steve Jobs' chart, you would see that he would be considered in human design a split definition generator. Now, knowing what Steve Jobs did, there are a few things to look at in his human design chart. For one, he's emotional, sacral to the root to the solar plexus, and he has a projector channel from the ajna to the throat, and he has 4 gates coming out of the self center. He also has the splenic center activated to the sacral through the 5027, which is also in the dream design or the spiritual dimension of the personality. What's interesting is that he has the 59th gate, which is a portal gate to the emotional world. And you can see when I ran his postnatal chart, he became a manifesting generator. So when you begin to look at all of the calculations that were necessary to get to find the physical, I'm scrolling to get you to the biological world, which is a different matrix. And Ra talked about the biology and the physiology. Much of what he said was not supported medically or statistically, but some of his concepts are very interesting and very useful from a common sense point of view. So when looking at the biological matrix, one of the really interesting things is that the emotional center is only there in the physical world and the mental world. This is Steve Jobs' physical world design. And as you can see, he is a projector and he has the emotional center between the 4037. So I'm showing you all of these worlds. Each one functions uniquely on its own. And this is the emotional world. I'll make it bigger. So in every world, I do 2 calculations. Why, and this is the, I'll say why. I do 2 calculations because we know that a baby continues developing on a very basic level until they're 3 months of age. And when I did the calculations to get the sleep design of a mammal, which is important because we know that mammals dream. So Ra was given the concept, 88 solar degrees and 88 lunar degrees. And when I took the 88 lunar degrees and I went down to 88 lunar minutes, lo and behold, I got the calculations of the 4 worlds that are documented by critical times in early human development. A week before birth and a week after birth, the spiritual comes in. 2 days before and after birth, the emotional world comes in. And 3 months after birth, the mental world with choice comes in. It is at 3 months of age that a baby begins to reach for objects, and the parents always breathe a sigh of relief and say, he's developing normally. So this is the emotional world that I have up on the screen, the matrix. And you'll notice it's a 33-gate matrix, and it has one portal pointing to the mental world, solar plexus. The emotional, I call it the emotional angelic world, is a world where we transform the challenges of our mental emotional life and our emotional reactivity, and we bring it up to spirit, and we bring it to a higher frequency where we can be loving and compassionate and accepting of all types and of all people and of recognizing their divinity. And in my mind, the critical factor is the spiritual world. And I'll show you the matrix. This is the matrix for the spiritual world. It's a 15-gate matrix. You've generally seen it laid on its side. It's very interesting that it connects to the splenic center, and it connects to our instinct and to our connection with all living things. The 15-5 is the only channel in the whole body graph that exists in all worlds. And that is something that, as human design people, you would have heard that from Ra, that the 15-5 is the only channel in the body graph that is in all worlds. And it is on all worlds because we tap into that nature of the collective unconscious in our spiritual world. Now, looking at Steve Jobs, and I'll explain a little bit more about this world. If any of you have questions or want to interrupt me for something you don't understand, feel free. So the reason I put the prenatal spiritual dream world in a vertical configuration is that when we sleep and dream in REM, which is rapid eye movement, the cortex turns on and is functional, because we know from brain scans that when the rapid eye movements are happening during sleep and dreaming, that there is carryover from the cortex of our sleeping brain to the cortex and neurological pathways of our waking brain. And that's why when we wake up in the morning, given that consciousness is generally state specific or frequency specific, we only remember fragments of our dreams. We can train ourselves to be a little bit more in touch with the dreaming state. But what's really interesting in Steve Jobs' chart is that his ajna and crown are fairly active, although the crown remains open in this configuration. And you can see that he always has the 1762, which is a portal into the spiritual world. He also has the 50th gate, he has the 58th gate, and he has the 15. So, and then when you look at his postnatal design, he gets the 27. So when you begin to look at 8 charts side by side, you begin to see that a person is not each of these separately, but they combine And when we look at Steve Jobs' integrated chart, we see a man who's an extremely strong, creative, emotional, manifesting generator. And his emotionality is a reactive emotionality, which he needs to process through his creative intelligence, through a story. We know that Steve was a great storyteller. And in fact, I put a quote by him in this document. And when I woke up this morning and was reading from my cosmic guidance book, which is a book that breaks down statements based on everyday's astrological and multidimensional design charts into 4 worlds and an integrated world. I read in today's integrated chart, Steve Jobs' quote. And I will make this smaller so I can see where the quote is. And the quote is, and I'd like you all to think about this, because think about it in your own life and think about how Steve's statement, looking back on your life, brings you to now, and what makes sense now that when you were doing it then, you didn't know why you were doing it. So the quote is, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backward. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. The approach has never let me down, and it has made all the difference in my life. Steve Jobs. So if we look at his multidimensional chart again, oh, you know what, I can't see anybody. Where is it? Here we go. This is Steve Jobs' integrated chart. It is much easier to see who this man is and who he became when you begin to recognize someone who was extremely intuitive, who had a mission to take care of the world in a different way, who was extremely motivated. He had the 54-32, which is goals. It comes out of the physical as well as the mental and the emotional worlds. So when somebody has the 54th gate in more than one world, they have a need to achieve and a need to prove competence. That's the earliest need that a baby has, is the need for competence. If they didn't have that need coming out of the 54th hexagram in the body graph, they would not survive. Notice that Steve has all 3 formats coming from the root to the sacral. He's a very clear single definition manifesting generator with a very strong role to play. And what you can see adding in the integrated is he gets the 63-4 and the 11-56, and he has the 17-62 with the other 2 formats coming out of the crown. Very strong thinker, very strong storyteller. And also you can see tragically that a lot of his emotional reactivity was related to digestion. And we know that Steve died of pancreatic cancer. So I don't know that that would show up in his design. I don't think we could have predicted it, but retrospectively looking at it, we certainly can make some sense out of that. So I want to, I think I'd like to stop the share. If I can figure out how. Yep. And I would just like to talk to all of you about the four worlds. And Gitas, can you give me a clue about time when you want to stop for questions?
Yeah, of course. I'm just trying now to unmute everybody. So, Algi, could you help me if you're still there? I mean, okay, so I'm gonna go through and try. And yes,
sure,
guys, yes, we're gonna move to Teams, sorry, to Zoom. We're planning to move to Zoom. But let me just, you know, start unmute everybody, and if you can.
Okay, allow it all. So
Yeah,
now
please.
everyone has.
Yeah, so you can unmute yourself, guys, if you have some questions about the four worlds.
Gita, should I be on exit spotlight? Should I exit the spotlight?
Oh, yes, you can. Yes, if you can. Yes.
What is that going to do?
Yeah.
No, then a guest
So
is showing up.
you can, guys, put your cameras on. You can unmute yourself if you want, and you can ask some questions. I see Katie.
How
Hi,
come
Katie.
everybody else is bigger than me on the screen?
No, it's all good now, Eleanor. Everything's fine. I think I see everyone's equals. So yeah. Hi,
I see
Mira.
some familiar faces.
Good. So yeah, thanks so much for showing some. Yeah. So if you have some questions, and please feel free to ask. Pamela, hello.
Hi. Does anybody want to ask me a question or want me to talk more about something that I touched on?
Hi, Nikki.
Nikki.
So there was something I think I heard you say about the months after a child is born.
Yes.
That resonated with me because sometimes when I'm reading charts, and especially I don't know that time or whatever, and I look at the whole day of charts. Sometimes I like to incorporate, because in my mind, and you might have confirmed this, I say, oh, well, if the energies were still transiting during that day that this child was born, that those could have been.
So, Nikki, let me explain it.
Okay.
When Ra gave me the dream design, and he and I taught a class on the dream design and sleep, and what I brought into that class was the architecture of sleep and dreaming. And in the architecture of sleep and dreaming, dream is one level of consciousness, but then we move to alpha, which is a little bit deeper, and then we move to theta and delta. So there are different levels to dreaming and sleeping. And Rod did not have the sleep design of a mammal. And having litters of kittens, I knew that my cats dream. They have REM, right? And sometimes they twitch and do other things. So I needed to find that calculation to be accurate, because what I found when I tested the human design body graph was that it was an incomplete system. Not everything held together. So I was looking for missing pieces. And so I followed the logic, and I had twin kittens, one of whom died at age 10 and one who lived to age 18, identical twins. So I used their birth chart to the second and was able to get down to a lunar minute. When I did those calculations for all four matrices, solar 88 degrees, solar minute 88 degrees, before and after birth. Because in astrology, and I'm an astrologer, we always look back 90 days and we look forward 90 days to see how the charts are going to progress. But when I laid out the 8 charts, remember, I'm trained as a developmental psychologist, so I know early development pretty well. And I looked at them. 3 months before birth is the third trimester. A week before birth is when the baby drops. And that's the calculation of the dream wave. Spirit enters the fetus. 2 days before birth, the mother begins to feel more contractions and the hormones change. An hour and a half before birth is transition in labor. I went, holy shit. This is hitting development critical stages right on target. And then I looked at the postnatal. An hour and a half after birth, the baby is breathing on its own. 2 days after birth, the mother's milk comes in. Colostrum turns to milk, and the baby and the mother bond. If you've had any children, you know these times are accurate. A week after birth, in many cultures, there's a ceremony naming the baby. In Judaism, there's a bris. In early Catholicism, there was the baptism as soon as you could, usually within a week. Now it's any time. And then 3 months after birth is when the baby has volition and reaches. So we have in the 4 worlds, the mental, the spiritual, the emotional, and the physical. The spiritual and the physical are lunar calculations. And of course, they're lunar calculations. A woman's cycle is a month. Every month, the moon goes around the wheel. So we're constantly being influenced. And in that first 3 months of life, what gets laid down is every cosmic energy between the sun and the earth is 180 degrees. And if you go around the zodiac, you're going 180 with the sun and 180 with the moon, with the earth, by the time the baby is 3 months old. Prenatal 3 and postnatal 3 is 6 months. So we've gone around the wheel between the sun and the earth. We are 95% of the population statistically, if not more, are designed to be manifesting generators in their composite. So what I did when I saw all these charts was to begin coloring in. Which world is this? Where does it come in? What does it mean? Let's say you have no sacral center defined in the mental world, and then you go to sleep and you get it. You're going to be a very different person than someone who has the sacral center in their waking life, goes to sleep and loses it. And that was my first clue. I was sitting on near my pool in California, and 2 ladies who had just learned design came to see me. And one was a generator, and one was a projector. And one lost the sacral when she slept, and the projector got the sacral when she slept. And I said to them, so the one with the sacral, you go to sleep knowing what you think you want, and you wake up in the morning and you second guess yourself. And she said, how did you know? And I looked at the other lady and I said, and you go to sleep not knowing what you want to do, and you wake up in the morning and you know. And she went, oh my God. And I walked into my living room where Ra was sitting, and I said to Ra, look at this, Ra. The dream design, which is all we had, is telling us something about how somebody functions. And he didn't understand about the dreams at all. Vicky, I just lost your image. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. Thank you.
And does it make sense to you?
I mean, it does, but then I don't even want to take my open head and Ajna into the other questions of how to make sense of, like, I guess the validity of the things that we put into the regular, chart.
I'm not saying that all of those things are wrong. I'm saying they limit people.
That there's more. I'm just, and I believe that, but is that, but then there's more, and then it explains what the variations of things that we experience.
Yes. And what I believe is that the spiritual design is the unified integrative field of consciousness, because our body certainly has no ajna or crown. And we're always making decisions about what's right for us. And we're having to sort out all of the information coming from outside in the mental world that's probably wrong for us. So where do we stand and say, and I see Pamela's face on the screen, and she loves when I say this, when you know what you know, and nobody can tell you you don't know it, then stand up for what you know, because you're right.
That's interesting. Well, I'm very intrigued. So I'm a manifesting generator, and every time I introduce myself with my human design, I always say, well, I'm a manifesting generator that feels like a projector. And I was like, I ran my chart like throughout the whole day. I was like, somewhere I feel like I'm a projector. So maybe in one of these worlds, I'm a projector.
Nikki, feel free to go on my calendar. And I'm happy to do your chart, and I'm happy to look at it with you and, briefly show you what it is.
Thank you. I appreciate
some of the people who are in the webinar have already done that.
Oh, okay.
And I think it's pretty interesting.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions?
Okay, I think one raised hand, I guess. Give me a second. Isaac Madrano. Could you unmute yourself, Isaac?
Perfect. Thank you. So my question is, I was told, yes.
Okay.
So
I can't see you, Isaac.
Let's see.
What's your question?
So I was told at birth that the first milk I got was formula, because my mom, had in fever and actually had to do a C-section. I was about 26 days late. How would that impact in terms of like, I guess,
well,
my development there?
The milk comes down, whether your mother was with you or not. I'm sure she bonded to you. Did she have a chance to hold you or see you?
I never asked that question, but
well, I'm sure somebody connected with you. Your dad probably held you, or go do some research on it. And obviously, attachment happens over a period of time. That's a critical period. It's an important time. And I certainly remember after my first child was born thinking, and I gained so little weight when I was pregnant, and I had a natural delivery. And afterwards I was thinking, oh, so I had this baby. And I kept going back through my mind, oh, I'm supposed to feel like really attached. And I didn't feel any of that. And then I stood up and I looked in the mirror and I crinkled my forehead. And I had noticed that my son crinkled his forehead, and the hormones came rushing in, and I would have broken down the nursery door to get to that baby. So I felt the moment of attachment to my child, and it would be interesting for you, Isaac. Your mother probably felt a huge sense of attachment to you after what she went through. So whether or not you can go back and get all the data, at 2 days of age, you attached to somebody, or your health would have suffered. And that's just a physiologic, biologic, psychological fact where the worlds come together. Does that answer it, Isaac?
Yes, answers and also poses more questions.
Yeah, go get for all of you in this webinar, one of the most important things you can do while you have family around is get your history. Learn all the stories you can from your family history. There is so much that is unspoken that turns out to be epigenetic intelligence or inheritance, or family myths that carry on. The more educated you are, the more conscious you can be. So if you have family around who have stories from your childhood, go ask them. And there's a wonderful Storyworth is an app that you can do a story every week for your family. And for those of you who have children, it's a really nice thing for your kids to be able to read your stories, and stories about when they were little. Actually, last week with my granddaughter, on my iPhone, pictures from when she was a baby came up, and I sent it to her, and she was so delighted to hear the stories about all the photos. So that is the spiritual world connecting through the portal of the emotional world to the emotional reactive world of the mental world. So through the spirit and through the love and through the stories, you heal the emotional world that is tied to the mental world.
Okay. And one last one. In looking at, let's say, before running the integrated emotional projector, after the integration, manifesting generator, is it analogous to almost look at it as like the projector body graph as like the rising sign?
No.
One is appears to others?
Which world is the projector in? Is it the human design chart?
Yes.
Then I would look at it as in the mental world. If you're a projector and the definition is in, where's the definition? The head to the ajna? The crown to the ajna? Somewhere else.
Solar plexus.
To which channel?
I believe it's a 3740.
Yes, so you are.
3740.
Okay, so you do not pick up emotional energy from people, but you are likely to pick up physical energy from people through the splenic center, and to be intuitive in sensing when something is wrong, especially around food and eating and digestion. And if you have, even in your integrated chart, if you get either the 4521 or the 12th gate, then pay attention to your breathing, because note that the 4521 is the only channel in the body graph that connects directly between the throat and the heart. So it's oxygen. We breathe in oxygen. and it goes to the muscle of the heart. So when you're stressed, especially with the 40-37, if your breathing alters, then pay attention to the other components of yourself to see what you need to know and what you need to do and how you want to handle yourself. So each world gives you clues. The mental world is the reality world. The spiritual world is your soul. It's what you really want to manifest in the world and who you are. The emotional world is related to the physiology. That's why we have lie detector tests that use the galvanic skin response, and it's unconscious. And it connects to the mental world. So a lot of times your physiologic reactions are related to what you're doing in the mental world. Whereas if what you were reacting to was what's happening in the spiritual world, you would probably make decisions that are far more aligned with who you really are. And in fact, for many people, the spiritual postnatal chart is a very good indicator of the timing of important decisions in their life.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Eleanor. We have another question. I think Rachel Lomas want to ask some question.
Okay, Rachel?
Oh, hello, Dr. Eleanor. Can you hear
Hi.
me?
I can
Hi.
hear you. I can't see you, but I can hear you.
Okay. Thank you. I was wondering, my son, I induced him on his due date because they said his head was big and he weighed a lot, but it wasn't absolutely necessary. I just decided to do it with my doctor. And then ever since I looked at his first human design chart, I've had some regret or wondering about that. And I've done his chart, just his normal one, a few days afterwards to see if it would have changed, or I know it's kind of haunted me, but I wondered what you think of induction.
Well, you know, it's an interesting question, and it's one that I know Marvin and I asked Ra about, not just induction, but also preemies. My grandson was a preemie, and I don't think it is something in astrology. We say that it's just meant to be. Things happen the way they happen for a reason. And so when the baby takes its first breath, that is the moment of its independence from the mother, so to speak. And so that is a very critical marker. What you're really asking is about the timing of the 3 months before and the 3 months after. Now, the 3 months after is based on the birth time, but the 3 months before, when we asked Ra about that, he said that the voice told him, you go by the birth date. So I don't really have the answer. I wish I did, but I think the baby's ready when it's ready. And, you know, obviously your obstetrician thought that the baby was ready, and clearly he was.
Thank you.
He didn't have problems, I assume.
He was a very healthy, very large baby with a giant head.
Well, so you did him a big favor by inducing him.
Well, I was trying to do myself a favor by protecting my body from.
Yeah, but you protected his head.
Okay, yeah, that makes he does have a very large head, but I just had, I don't know, some regret because now they're saying more of the science now is saying you can leave the babies in longer for IQ and other when I was having a baby, things changed.
Rachel, you did what was in integrity for you and your baby. And there's not any formula that anybody can tell you, but you felt into it and you thought it was the right thing to do. And your son was healthy and good, and no reason at all for you to second guess the delivery.
Okay, thank you for that. That gives me some peace. Thank you.